After the final whistle, the footballers, the ex-players, and the analysts were absolutely ruthless. And what they did next might genuinely surprise you. Because after weeks of talk about a rigged tournament and a referee supposedly sitting in Argentina's pocket, you'd have bet the house that England's heartbreak would trigger 1,000 furious videos aimed squarely at FIFA. Instead, something much rarer happened. The biggest names in the game watched the same match, reached the same verdict, and laid the truth out in the open for everyone to see. England threw this one away themselves. And the man they all pointed at wasn't wearing a referee's badge. He was standing in the England dugout. So, let's go through exactly what they said once the dust settled, because the consensus is genuinely damning. Quick reminder of how we got here. England led through Anthony Gordon in the 55th minute and were half an hour from a first World Cup final since 1966. Then Thomas Tuchel started swapping attackers for defenders. England retreated into their own box and Messi set up 2 goals in the closing minutes. An Enzo Fernandez screamer and Alero Martinez header to win it 2-1. From Gordon's goal onward, England had just 12% of the ball and almost nobody in the game thinks that was bad luck. They think it was a choice and a wrong one. Yes, the match itself was a brawl. The opening 30 minutes producing a record 11 fouls and not a single shot. And plenty of fans will forever blame the referee for letting Argentina set that violent tone. But when the pros sat down to dissect the defeat, that's not where their fingers pointed. They pointed at the substitutions. The specific changes are worth spelling out because they are at the heart of everything that followed. With England leading and Argentina wobbling, Tuchel took off Gordon, the goalscorer, along with Reece James and Declan Rice, and sent on 3 defensive-minded players, Ezri Konsa, Dan Burn, and Nico O'Reilly. At one stage, England had 6 defenders on the pitch. The attacking reinforcements, Ivan Toney and Marcus Rashford, were not introduced until the 95th minute, long after Argentina had already surged back in front. In other words, England spent the most dangerous half hour of their tournament actively removing their attacking threat and only reached for it once the game was already gone. Start with the man who captained England more than almost anyone. Wayne Rooney didn't dance around it, saying flatly that England crumbled and that it started from the manager and the decisions he made. His argument was pointed and psychological. The moment attacking players see 3 defenders coming on at 1-0, they lose belief. They start thinking about how to survive rather than how to win. A top manager, Rooney argued, counteracts a surge by going more front-footed, not by burrowing deeper. And this wasn't just an English pylon. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, no sentimentalist about England, watched the same match and concluded they were the better team, but tactics let them down. Even Harry Kane, England's own captain and record scorer standing in the wreckage of it, admitted the truth. We seem to just try and hold on, which at this level, he said, is simply not enough. When your own skipper is describing the game plan as hanging on for dear life, the defense has already collapsed. And the sharpest theme running through all of it wasn't tactics at all. It was courage. Michael Owen framed it as a straight comparison. Watch Spain at 1-0. That's courage. That's bravery. Then watch England and ask what the difference is. Owen's verdict was brutal and honest all at once. That England were arguably the better team but deserved to lose. That it could even have been 4-1. And that bringing on 3 defenders while a goal to the good sends an unmistakable message of fear. Spain's own legend Iker Casillas was even blunter, calling England's retreat a cowardly approach and noting that once you refuse to leave your own box, the logical outcome simply arrives. Micah Richards said the same thing from the English side. When you score, you go for the second. And by dropping deep, England made it too easy for Argentina in that second half. The word that kept coming up from Englishmen and Spaniards alike was that real bravery is controlling the ball under pressure, not hoofing at 40 yards and praying. Then there was the Messi-shaped hole at the center of the whole decision. And nobody skewered it better than Gary Lineker. His point was almost incredulous. If your entire plan is to sit everyone deep, why on earth would you do that against the greatest player who has ever lived and then not even assign anyone to mark him? Just put someone on him, Lineker pleaded. He had so much space. And that's exactly what happened. England bunkered in, handed Messi the one patch of grass he loves most just outside the box and let him whip cross after cross after cross into a crowded area. Both goals came from that space. You cannot design a plan more perfectly suited to Messi's strengths if you tried, and England handed it to him gift-wrapped. Now here's where it gets genuinely instructive, because the smartest voices didn't just say TUC was wrong. They explained precisely why this always fails. Terry Henry pointed out that England had actually been about to bring Marcus Rashford on to push the game, and then Gordon scored and Tuchel abandoned the plan and went to a back five far too early, surrendering the initiative just when England held it. Look at how the best in the club game handle a lead, the argument went. Mikel Arteta won a Premier League title, winning 14 of his games by a single goal. And he did it without ever ripping up his shape, trusting his players to keep the ball and stay a threat on the principle that if you have possession, the opponent cannot score. Tuchel did the exact opposite. And Cesc Fabregas, now a manager himself, described the psychological trap in a way every player recognizes. The instant a striker comes off for a defender, the whole team's mindset flips to we have to sit back. You invite pressure. You invite crosses and rebounds and set pieces. And in his words, 80 to 90% of the time it backfires. This wasn't hindsight. It's a known, documented mistake. And Tuchel walked straight into it. It wasn't all laid at TUC's door. In fairness, Gary Neville flagged a deeper problem that Declan Rice, one of England's most important players, had been struggling physically the entire tournament. He's not been right since day one, Neville said. And a below-engine room combined with a fatigued group of players and Tuchel baffling everyone by leaving Bukayo Saka, Noni Madueke, and Eberechi Eze unused on the bench. All fed into the same collapse. So the picture is a little more layered than one bad substitution, but every road still led back to the dugout. And against this entire chorus, one-man stood alone with no regrets. Thomas Tuchel himself. He defended the retreat, explaining that England went to a back five because the gaps were already being exploited, that Argentina were winning every header and crossing relentlessly, and that he was simply trying to plug the holes. He did admit at least that his side got too passive after we scored. He half owned it, saying the responsibility sits with the coach, and half shrugged it off, noting that there are millions of coaches who know better after the final whistle. And crucially, the people who employ him are standing firm. The FA chief executive Mark Bullingham backed him publicly, insisting, "We have a manager who we think is doing a really good job, and Tuchel is expected to see out his contract all the way to a home Euros in 2028. Whatever the football world thinks, he isn't going anywhere." That's worth dwelling on because in the heat of Wednesday night, plenty of fans assumed a defeat this painful, decided by tactics this widely condemned, would put his job on the line. It won't. Tuchel signed an extension before the tournament. The deal reportedly carrying performance clauses rather than a hair-trigger exit. And the sense inside the camp is that he's been undone more by misfortune and a brutal schedule than by poor planning. The FA point to the positive environment he's built. The players who praise his professionalism, the rapport he's grown with supporters. A shock loss to Dr. Congo back in the round of 32 might genuinely have threatened him. But reaching a semi-final via one of the hardest routes in the tournament has oddly insulated him. So the man the entire punditry class spent Wednesday night filleting will be the same man leading England out at their home Euros. Make of that what you will. So let's take it seriously for a moment, because there's a wiser point hiding underneath the avalanche. Was Tuchel wrong? Yes, almost certainly. And even he half admits it. But England's most self-destructive habit might not be any single tactic. It might be the noise itself. The instant they lose, the blame machine roars into life. Ex-players become headline makers. Television debates curdle into social media dog piles, and the actual football gets buried under the shouting before anyone has even calmly watched it back. It's a cycle England have repeated for decades. And it may be doing as much long-term damage as any back five. And some of the reaction really did tip into the ugly. Michael Owen went as far as declaring there should be no such thing as foreign coaches in international football. A take that says far more about the panic of the moment than it does about anything Tuchel got wrong. When the criticism slides into scapegoating a man for his passport, you've stopped analyzing football and started looking for someone to burn. And that's really the trap England keep falling into tournament after tournament. They don't just play against 11 opponents on the pitch. They play against the roar of expectation and recrimination they generate around themselves. Before anyone has calmly re-watched the game, the narrative is already set in stone. The villain already chosen, the takes already flying. Every former player becomes a pundit. Every pundit becomes a headline. And the sheer weight of it seems to press down on the next group of players who walk into the next tournament already braced for the fallout rather than hungry for the prize. Tuchel himself once put it perfectly about a previous England side that they seemed more afraid of dropping out than excited to win. On Wednesday, in his own dugout, he watched that exact fear play out and then became the latest name feasted upon by the very machine he diagnosed. And here's the thing almost everyone screaming about England conveniently forgot. Argentina were superb. Lost in all the English navel-gazing is the fact that this was Argentina's most disciplined, controlled, clean performance of the entire knockout stage. Messi set up both goals, taking his tally to a record number of World Cup assists. And this was Argentina's 11th goal scored after the 75th minute at this tournament alone. That is not just an opponent collapsing. That is a team with an almost supernatural instinct for the throat. A side that has now turned falling behind in the knockouts into a routine on its way to a second straight final. Scalen described it with that line that's followed them all tournament, that there was blood in the water and we went for it. England opened the door, no question. But Argentina didn't stumble through it. They kicked it off its hinges with genuine ruthless quality. And no amount of Tuchel criticism should erase that. And this wasn't a one-off, which is what makes it so frightening. It's the second knockout game in a row Argentina have won after trailing late following their escape act against Egypt, and the third straight where they conceded first and still advanced. Scaloni put his finger on why, describing a group that plays its best when everything is against it. A team that, in his words, plays like 7- or 8-year-olds who fear nothing and never think about the consequences of missing. He half-joked that if the Egypt comeback was epic, this one was epic squared. That's a dangerous mentality to be carrying into a final. Whatever help the officials may or may not have given Argentina across this tournament, the psychological steel they showed in Atlanta was entirely their own. And it's the single scariest thing about them heading into Sunday. So the football world has spoken, and for once it speaks in something close to a single voice. Tuchel got the biggest call of his England reign wrong. England bottled a winning position against the world champions. And not one referee, not one V-screen, not one FIFA conspiracy was required to explain it. They did this to themselves. And the grim punchline is that nothing changes. Tuchel stays. The FA holds firm. The ex-pros will move on to the next controversy, and England will carry the same argument, courage versus caution, into the next tournament and probably the one after that. Whether they ever actually learn from it is the only question left. Argentina, of course, could not care less. They're too busy getting ready for a World Cup final. Do you think the pros are right to hammer Tuchel, or has the reaction gone completely over the top? Drop your take below and stay with me, because Argentina versus Spain on Sunday is the final we've been building toward all tournament.